Good morning. We are live, another Friday edition of Coffee with Rich. And this morning, I'm once again joined by Joe Saunders of the Managing Violence podcast, all the way in Australia. And I believe it's 9:30 there. Is that right?
10:30.
10:30.
Don't undersell me, man. I'm if I fall asleep halfway through, it's not my fault.
Well, I'm so glad you came on, Joe, and taking the time to give us your thoughts, man. I got some good questions for you. Excited to chat with you once again.
My pleasure. We always have fun together.
Yeah. Hey, as you're joining us this morning, please, if you're an American Warrior Society member, tell me where you're at and what your coin number is. I'm always excited to hear where our members are. If you're not familiar, we have a Coffee with Rich YouTube channel, so now you can watch previous episodes on your smart TV at home, and you don't have to worry about trying to do something on the phone or anything weird like that. We made it super easy for you. Gerald is on this morning from Oregon. It's 5:30 where he's at. Good morning, Gerald. Coin number 952. Please like and hit that share button. Let's talk about sponsors, man, because they're the people that keep this show on the road. Got some amazing sponsors. Century Martial Arts, makers of the Bob XL. You want to take your strike routine to the next level? You're going to need a Bob XL. You want to shoot Bob? Not a problem. Take him to the range. You can fill that base full of sand or water, whatever you need. You can do that with the Bob XL. And you want to work on your leg strikes. You're a Muay Thai guy. I hope you are. Work those leg strikes on Bob XL because he's actually made for that. We also have the Cool Fire Trainer. I don't know about where you're at, Joe, but ammunition prices here in the States, my friend, are outrageous, if you can even find it. So the Cool Fire Trainer is the way that you can keep that dry fire game going without spending a lot of money on ammo and taking a second mortgage out on the house. That's all bad. We have apphemp.com. A good friend, Jesse Ross, and his lovely family are growing some of the finest CBD products that money can possibly buy. And at 52, my joints take a pounding. Knee surgery, shoulder surgeries. I've had all that stuff. I'm abusing my body in my youth. You're going to want that CBD products to help your body recover quicker. So please check them out, apphemp.com. All of our sponsors, man, the easiest thing to do, go to AmericanWarriorShow.com and click that link, and you'll get discount codes to all of our amazing sponsors like Mountain Man Medical. You need to have a trauma kit in every single vehicle and one in your home. We have a co-branded trauma kit that my good friend Justin Carroll, former MARSOC operator, who's now a paramedic, he and I put that kit together in conjunction with Brian McLaughlin, a former Navy corpsman, and those are ready for order. They're ready to ship to you now that all the gear is in. Mountain Man Medical, the American Warrior Society co-branded kit. And last but not least, Precision Holsters. If you need a good competition rig, Precision Holsters got you covered. You need a good concealed carry rig, Precision Holsters has you covered. I was teaching on the range all week last week out in beautiful Montana. I'll be in Michigan next week with my business partner, Mr. Mike Seeklander. We'll be teaching a firearms instructor development course next week, and I will be rocking my Precision Holsters gear. So please check them out. Get a good discount code. Let's see who we got on, Joe. Then we'll kick it.
All right.
Got David on. It says, I love Joe Saunders' podcast. Well, I'm sure he appreciates that, David.
I certainly do.
Kathleen is on. Good morning, Kathleen. Joe out there from Yukon, Oklahoma, coin number 1919. Good morning, Joe. Glad to have you. Yako is on. Says, how's it, guys? Hope it's well down there in South Africa, Jocko. My brother Jeff is on. Good morning, Jeff. And Alan Kelly from occupied Virginia, coin number 1571. Good morning, my friend. And Gordon, good morning, sir. He is coin number 1688 from Ohio. Please like and hit that share button. We got Joe Saunders, once again, all the way from Australia, of the Managing Violence podcast. Let me read your bio, Joe. Joe started training martial arts at the age of 4, created a playground police force to protect bullied kids at the age of 6, and has been fascinated with violence management and protection ever since. As an undergraduate psychology student in Brisbane, Australia, Joe took a part-time job bouncing in local nightclubs. This exposure to real-world violence fanned the flames of his desire to protect and led him into roles including executive protection, armed protection, hospital security, and senior violence management education roles. He holds instructor or coaching certificates in probably at least a half dozen different systems. Today, Joe works for one of Australia's leading risk management consultancies, Risk2 Solutions. He is the state manager for Victoria and Tasmania, as well as the national practice lead for occupational violence and aggression. He consults with federal and state government clients as well as private enterprises on a full-time basis. Good morning, sir.
Well, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for. Any questions? It's always awkward hearing someone read your bio, and especially when you're used to doing it to other people. It's weird to be on the other side. So appreciate that.
I'm just excited to have you, man. Guile from the Philippines is on. It says, good morning, Rich, Joe, and everybody. Hey, man, I'm going to get right out of the gate because, you know, I know that you're an instructor in, gosh, a lot of different stuff. Actually, I had the list, but it was just too many to read. But you're an instructor in a lot of stuff, Joe. And I want to ask you, man, what makes a good instructor?
Ooh, that's a really good question to start off with. And by the way, just before anyone judges me, it might be coffee with Rich, but it's whiskey with Joe at the moment, right? So
I love it.
It's 10:30 p.m. I'm not day drinking, right? We're well and truly. It's Friday night. I'm allowed. Okay,
You are allowed.
The only thing you're allowed to judge me for is that I'm having Irish whiskey with Coke in it. So I mean, you're welcome to judge me for that. That's totally okay. But hey, sue me. I'm a simple man. What makes a good instructor? Man, it's really fascinating because I actually just had a conversation about this yesterday with a friend of mine for my podcast, for the Managing Violence podcast. And we're talking about that big transition in the martial arts context from being a martial artist to running a school. And the difference of being like trying to make something that you're passionate about commercially viable. And where are your ethics when it comes to marketing, and what are the skills you need to learn to become a good instructor and be able to retain students and build long-term relationships and all those things. And they've got nothing to do with martial arts. Those skills are completely separate. It's like being someone who enjoys going for a bike ride versus running a bike shop, right? They're going to be different things. So I think before we get into the business side, I mean, I happen to touch on that as well. But I mean, for me, the thing that makes a good instructor is that firstly, you need to realize and then continually remind yourself that it's not about you. It's about your student. It's about what your student wants to get out of the session or out of their engagement with you, that you are there to provide a service to them. And it's on you to understand what it is that they're looking for, not what you want to give them. So, and to be honest about whether you can give them what they're looking for or not. I mean, if you run a martial art that isn't, or I'm just going to keep saying the martial arts context. I mean, instructor skills can go very broad, but in the martial arts context, if someone's looking for something that I don't provide, like I've never been a guy that runs a lot of kids classes. Like I see a lot of value in it, but it's a very specialized skill set. So if someone wants me to teach a preteen child, I need to have people I can send them to. So ethically, I know I'm doing the right thing because I'm not a specialist in training kids. Similarly, if I have someone who is looking for to do high choreographed movie style fight scenes, or they want to do something that's really flashy, that's not my bag, right? So I can give them some introduction to some stuff that I've learned along the way, but I'm certainly not going to be an expert that guides them to wherever they want to go with that. So understanding what you're good at, and then be able to have those honest and open conversations with students to figure out whether that's something that's a fit for what they're looking for. And again, then just staying focused on is their journey. It's how do you get them from where they are to as good as they can be, not about what you want to train, who you want to have representing your gym. And I mean, if you want to be niche and pigeonhole and say, I just want to train MMA fighters and I just want people that want to fight competitively in a cage, and that's cool. Let's just be open and honest and upfront about that from the beginning, because that's how you're going to, one, achieve that dream, and two, do the right thing by your students. So that's first and foremost. It's not about you. It's about your student.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's you read any Malcolm Gladwell?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you read the book he wrote, What the Dog Saw?
I don't think I've seen that one. I don't think I've read that one.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing it other than like one time. And it's basically just a collection of his published works.
Okay.
But the title of the book comes from an article he wrote about Caesar Milan, who's, I guess, the famous dog trainer.
Dog whisperer. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, if you watch the video of Caesar Milan, it won't make sense to you. And it doesn't have to, because it's not about what you see. It's about what the dog saw. So again, it's that focus on the person that's in front of you that you're trying to influence. And understanding, I think that's so important. I've hired fitness trainers before, and I remember this one trainer who's a really fit young guy, and he says, "Okay, Rich, here's what we're going to do, pal. We're going to get in here. We're going to focus on squats." And this guy's got tree trunk legs, and I'm like, "Okay, we're going to do squats, huh?" Yeah. We're going to do squats, and we're going to do this and that. I said, "Well, I'm trying to get ready for a marathon, man. That's why I hired you. It has nothing to do with squats." Oh, okay. Well, so again, it's like you as the instructor, you got to focus on what are my needs, what are my goals, what am I trying to improve and accomplish, right?
Mm. And also, like, I've seen this happen so many times, especially I want to say especially with inexperienced business owners or academy owners, but realistically it's experienced ones as well. But I see like a new student come in, and then the first sales meeting it might go for an hour, and 45 minutes is the instructor outlining all their successes and the tournaments they've won and showing their trophies, and which is great if that's what the student is aspiring to be. Like if they want to be a tournament fighter and they want to win stuff and they want to go train with Chuck Norris, and you got the photo outside Chuck Norris's house before the security shoos you away, right? If that's what they want to do, then that's cool. But if you haven't even bothered to ask that question, one, you've just telegraphed from a mile away that you don't really care about them, you care about your own ego. And two, you could be wasting that time because they don't necessarily care about your trophies. They might just want to leave feeling a little bit safer. So it's so important, again, to stay focused. It's about providing a service. It's not about you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's once you, and I think it's a sacred bond between the teacher and the student. It really is. Like our class in Montana, most of the students flew there. They've got that money that they put out for the flight, the rental car, the lodgings. The course is not cheap. It's a week of their life they're giving up. To give them anything less than my absolute best is theft, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I just had this conversation. It's so funny that you're bringing up some of the same points, but like, no one cares what day you're having. Like, no one cares what mood you're in, whether you're a little bit under the weather. Like, that doesn't matter. If they've paid for something, you give them the product that they expect. I mean, if I walk into a bakery and I buy a cupcake, I don't want to go, well, it's okay that this cupcake tastes like crap because I know the baker had a bad day today. Like, I'm still going to be upset if I pay for something that's not up to what I expect. So, and the same thing should apply to martial arts, regardless of what day you're having. You don't take that out on your students. You don't give them less than what you can give them. And it's super hard, right? Because especially when you're an instructor, it takes a lot of mental energy, it takes a lot of physical energy. If you're not with it that day, it can be a real grind to try and get that out. But you should be able to consistently deliver 80%. All right. Not every day is going to be 120% day, but you should be able to consistently deliver 80% no matter what condition you're in. And I think that's again something that we in a field where we're giving of ourselves, it's really hard to ask. But at the end of the day, if you want to make money out of this, if you want to do this as a commercial business, then your students, your customers have a right to expect a consistency in service.
True, so true. And I think that a lot of people just want to wear the shirt that says instructor on it and puff their chest out and be cool. But listen to what Joe is saying this morning. It's not about you. Sometimes you got to be a good actor to step in front of your students and shrug off the fact that you had a fight with your wife or you didn't get much sleep last night, etc., to give them your absolute best. The next question I have for you, Joe, is why did you start the Managing Violence podcast? I don't think I asked that last time.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I never expected it to actually be a thing that people that I was known for. Like, it literally started because I thought I had something to teach, and at that point, I was only really teaching a small number of people, and I thought I wanted to provide a platform where I could have more of a lecture style presentation, where I could give some more theory, some more background information. People, when they sign up for a martial arts class or a self-defense class, they don't want to just sit around and listen to a guy talk for an hour. So they want to hit stuff, they want to practice stuff. Totally get that. And it was always really hard whenever I've been training people. It's always really hard to say, guys, bring your notepad and pen because we're going to do some underpinning knowledge, right? People don't show up to that class. So as much as I know it's important and it's really like not even just beneficial, I think it's fundamental. Like, you need to understand the whys of what you're doing. Uh, it was a platform to be able to have those sorts of conversations. And initially it was just going to be me. I was just going to update whenever I felt like it, and kind of just, do a stream of consciousness. Here's what I think about this subject. And I started thinking after the first 2 episodes, I was like, I wonder what Rory Miller has said about this. Rory Miller was the first guest that I really thought about. I was like, I love Rory's work. I've followed his, I've read his books for years. And I thought, I wonder if he's been interviewed on anything. And I started searching the Apple podcast directory for a Rory Miller interview. And I found like one or two. And when I listened to them, that was so superficial because, and it's no criticism. It's just that the hosts were not from the combatives martial arts self-defense world. They were health coaches, or they had a passing interest in the subject. So therefore, within an hour, like, it's really, they didn't go very deep. Like, there's sort of superficial, what is violence versus martial arts, like really basic kind of stuff for us that live this reality. And I thought, I want someone to interview these guys and go a bit deeper and go and get in the weeds, like for those of us that have been around for a little bit. And I thought maybe one day my podcast will be well established enough that I can get someone like Rory on the show. And as it turns out, I was connected on Facebook with Rory just because literally I'd sent him a friend request at some point and I didn't expect him to accept it, and he did. So we're Facebook friends. And I sent him a message and I said, hey, I've just started this podcast. I would love one day if you want to jump on. And I didn't expect to hear back from him. I got a message back like the next day saying, sure, when do you want to do it? And I thought, whoa, okay, cool. And that was kind of, I don't think Rory was my first interview. I think my first interview was Gershon Ben Karen from Boston. But Rory was like the second interview or third interview. And after that, I was like, man, I had so much fun talking to these guys that had basically been role models is probably a strong word, but they've been the authors of the books that have really shaped a lot of my knowledge and a lot of my career. And it just, one thing led to another, where I just kept being able to access these people, and they were so gracious with their time to be able to share it. And then I started getting feedback from people saying, this is an amazing value. Like, these are people that I haven't been able to access before, people I haven't heard of before, or just, it's great to listen to the authors of these books or these famous instructors unpacking their thoughts in an open conversational format. And that's, so really initially it was about me sharing what I knew, and then it's become this massive journey now of nearly 3 years of me basically doing a live public apprenticeship under the greatest minds in the industry, and hopefully providing a service as people get to sit with me as I learn from these masters.
I feel the exact same way about this little journey I'm on as well. And I want to circle back to something you said. When you were talking, Joe, about asking students to bring a pen and paper, and we're going to, do some of the underpinning knowledge that you need to have that kind of goes in conjunction with the skills that you're providing. And you said, we're going to talk about the why. And one of the things that we teach in our instructor course is, you establish instructor credibility, that hopefully will get them to want to pay attention to you. And then the next thing you do is discuss the what, why, how. Now, what we're going to discuss today, why is that important? And then how I'm going to deliver this material to you so that there's no ambiguity in the student's role in the learning process. But I think for adult learners, that a clear understanding of the why is incredibly important. And I'm so glad you brought that up, man, because you got to understand the why, because I think that provides context for what they're about to learn, right?
Absolutely. And look, we teach dangerous skills, right? We teach things that can get people into they can get them hurt. 2, they can injure themselves training. 3, they can injure someone else training. 4, if they use them irresponsibly, they can get themselves in prison, right?
Yes.
So we have a massive obligation to give people the ability to not only execute skills, but to do so responsibly, ethically, intelligently, understanding fully the nature of the situation that they're being placed in. And if we don't do that, then I have no problem calling out instructors as being negligent. If you're not educating your students about the legal frameworks they operate in, the effectiveness of a particular technique, the likelihood of success, whether you can do this wearing high heels, like all those kinds of basic things. If you're just living in a fantasy land and you're telling students that it's self-defense, that this is going to work in a violent situation, then yeah, you're negligent. All right. It's something we have to be so mindful of. And the more dangerous the material you're teaching, the more important it is that you give people the ability to make sound decisions about when and how they're going to use it. Sorry, Rich, I think you might be on mute still, brother.
Dude, I do this all the time. What's wrong with me? Hey, I want to say TC Fuller is on. It says holla from Oklahoma City. PJ Tahoe is on. Good morning, sir. Guile says he's having Dr. Pepper. Mike Mike Varley is on, says good morning. A coin number 1122 from Michigan. Mark is on from Boulder, Colorado. Yeah, I love having conversations about the instructor side of things because it's something that, I've been teaching since I became a tactics and close combat instructor in 1992 as a young Marine at the School of Infantry. So probably since that, off and on, I've been teaching at some level, not just combative stuff, but human communications and coaching and stuff like that. So it's something near and dear to my heart, and something that's probably misunderstood and really could be its own podcast. And I'm sure there are podcasts like that. But what's the difference, Joe, between a martial artist and a fighter? Is there a difference? And if so, what is that difference?
Yeah, look, there is a difference, or there can be a difference. There's plenty of people that are or that can do both to a high level. I truly believe that martial arts extends beyond fighting, but it must include fighting. So I think fighting is a subset of martial arts. And look, I guess my early days, my framework of martial arts is in the Japanese systems, where you have a clear delineation between the jutsu and the do, right? So the jutsu was the combat techniques, the actual battlefield applications, and the do was really came about in the late 1800s, where it was more about the personal development as a result of martial arts training. And I think the way I approach martial arts now, and especially as I've moved away from competition, I did spend a lot of time doing combat sport. As I've moved away from competition, like now martial arts to me is more about personal development. Like I don't live a lifestyle that puts me in a lot of conflict now. My work is very much in the corporate sector. No one's trying to stab me anymore. Like these are not real pressing concerns for me. I live in a good neighborhood, a safe country. Other than good security awareness and obviously not being complacent, I mean, realistically, my threat profile is significantly different to what it was in my 20s. So now I'm more interested in, like, am I being a good dad? Like, am I raising my kids right? Am I being a good husband? Am I contributing? Am I doing all the things that I need to do to be a good functional human being? So martial arts to me, it's not to say I don't think about my own personal safety and whether I would be able to protect my family if I needed to. That's certainly a skill that I think I've acquired over the years and now just needs to be continually maintained and honed. But I think to me, martial arts now is much more about my personal development. It's about how I manage stress. It's about the things that I learn about myself. It's about pushing myself to learn things I didn't think I could learn, or get good at things I didn't think I could get good at. Continually humbling myself, continually being willing to suck at something. Like these are really important character traits that. And look, I mean, I'm still in my 30s, right? So by the time I'm in my 40s and 50s, it's going to mean something else to me. But if it was all about fighting, I think I would have lost interest by now. I went through a phase where I was all about fighting. Like all I wanted to do was make sure either it was going to win me a medal or was going to keep me safe when I was brawling on the floor of a nightclub. That was all I was really interested in. But if I was limited to that, I don't think I'd still be training, much less having a podcast discussion about it. So, to me, I think a fighter is a subset of martial artists. But there are fighters that I wouldn't consider martial artists because they don't really have any of the martial arts ethos. They're athletes that are learning a skill that makes them good at damaging another human being, but I wouldn't necessarily call them a martial artist. And then there are martial artists that are also very good at fighting. So I think they're the same, but they're separate.
No, I think that's a great answer. And, you and I have a similar background in the fact that I worked nightclubs for years. And I think that is a good test bed for, by the time you strap on your brown belt or something like that, you're probably ready to work in a place like that to kind of see what works and see what doesn't work. But I guess when I look at, and I probably should have labeled that differently, Joe. If I had to ask you that question again, I would probably phrase it like the martial artist and a warrior, for example, because, I think that a warrior is probably a little bit better of a title, because I look at my own personal journey from going to combat And being able to, as an infantryman, to read the terrain and read the enemy situation and what ordnance is the best ordnance to use against these dug in troops in front of me, and understanding, so everything in the combative realm from what's in front of my hands to what's in front of my muzzle to what's 1,000 meters away, and I can get on my binos and get on the radio and make this thing happen in order to forward my mission. What is my mission and what am I trying to do? And like, you said a moment ago, nobody's trying to stab you anymore. So now the mission really is like being a better husband, a better father. And to me, that warrior ethos can really help you in anything in life, because you understand your mission. What tools can I bring to bear to become that better husband, that better father, that better whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to expand upon that, it's a really interesting question to frame it that way, because it does change the way I perceive what we're talking about. Uh, I think on one hand, like, you can call yourself a martial artist if you go do, 2 days a week at the Goju-Ryu Karate Dojo after the kids' class, and you go through the motions and you break a little bit of a sweat and you see some friends, and then you go back to your normal life, and that's totally fine. And I've got no problem with you calling yourself a martial artist, but I don't think you'd identify as a warrior, right? If that was your only involvement in anything conflict related. Uh, that said, I take issue with the overuse of the word warrior, because to me, like, I can't help but be a little bit literal and go, if you haven't been to war, or something approximating war, be careful about referring to yourself as a warrior, because, like, that's, to me, that's what the word means. But I do understand, obviously, the ethos of the warrior spirit and the warrior mindset and that kind of thing, and I think there's a lot of value in that. Probably the best definition that I will bring to bear, that always pops into my mind as soon as this topic comes up. I had the pleasure of interviewing twice Matt Larson, who's a director of combatives at West Point. And Matt is an amazing intellectual. He has a great mind. He's doing a PhD in the evolution of combat psychology. I think when that's done, that's going to make an amazing book. Matt's a brilliant guy, and really is the I guess the driving force behind the modern Army combatives program. And he has this great phrase that he calls, always be the warrior in the room. Okay. And what the warrior in the room is not about the baddest guy. It's not about the toughest guy. It's not about the guy with the most blades on him or the most guns on him. Or it's about the fact that if you are the warrior in the room, then everybody else is safer because you are there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that because from a fighting point of view, maybe everyone else is safer with your presence because you are the best at managing a crisis. Maybe you're the best at coordinating an evacuation. Maybe you're the best at first aid. Maybe you're the best at doing an emergency evacuation, getting people into a car and driving through dangerous conditions to get out of this crisis or emergency situation. So there's a whole bunch of skill sets that make someone potentially that warrior in the room. But we always need to be focused on this idea that, am I increasing the safety of the people around me through my presence? And if I'm not, then am I really being a warrior? Or do I just like playing dress up? It's something that we have to, it's a painful thing to think about sometimes. I've gone through phases where I'm like, I haven't trained very hard lately. I don't know if I'm really, what I think I am at the moment. But, I think on that, there's a lot to unpack. I think when we look at warrior in the traditional definition, as someone who's going to war, fighting in wars, in battles, called upon to protect others, there's no complacency allowed when your career is fighting. When every engagement, every time you get called to shift, you might die. There's a continual improvement. Right? There's always, you can never just go, okay, I've achieved that, now I'm done. It's, what else can I learn? How else can I improve myself? What skills can I learn? And as you said, it's not always about hand-to-hand combat. It might be marksmanship. It might be surveying a field. It might be battlefield strategy and tactics. It might be leading. It might be motivating. It might be training others to be able to increase the effectiveness of your fighting force. So whether we're talking about the battlefield or whether we're talking about corporate business, the warrior mindset should always be one of continual improvement, continual assessing of weaknesses, shoring up of those weaknesses, and building the capacity and capability of those around us.
I totally agree with that. And really, this could be an entire podcast, and maybe we need to do, just an entire show where we unpack it, because there's so many ways I can go. And I wrote an article probably 5 years ago about why I'm not a gun guy. And I just kind of think like, I'm not a gun guy, man, because it's just one tiny sliver of a skill set that is incredibly broad. For example, I really think breaching is sexy and cool, and I like to work on my lock picking. I'm not a lock picking guy. I used to teach mortar weapon systems, the 240 golf, you know, everything and anything in the Marine Corps small arms arsenal, and as well as close combat and patrolling and military operations in urban terrain. But my point of saying all that is to say, I'm not any one of those things, man. I mean, to find the right answer is more akin to something like what you just said Matt Larson is known for. Be that guy in the room, so that people can feel safer in your presence. And one of the things I talked to, I had Chris Palmer on recently, and he was a full-time SWAT operator for, I think, 13 years. He conducted 20-something hostage rescues, been in 20-something different shootings as a law enforcement officer. So an incredibly skilled guy. And we were talking about the same concept of like the folks that wrote the book Left to Bang, the Marine Corps Combat Hunter Program. When you walk into a room, it's like, who needs lethal force in this room? And I know that sounds crazy. We chuckle, but in reality, it is the highest hurdle to get over mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, is who do I need to use? And 99.9999999% of the time, nobody's going to need it. But if somebody needs it, they really need it right now, right? For the sake of everybody in this room, So having the ability to, and then once we go through that, nobody needs it. Okay, cool. Can I help somebody, with anything? And again, I think that's what makes a warrior. You're willing, capable, and competent enough to do that judicious use of force, but you're also capable and competent enough to do the other softer skills.
And I think that there's another piece there as well, which is something that gets easier, I guess, with a bit of maturity. It's recognizing when you're not the guy, when you don't have the skills that are needed right now, and someone else does, and perhaps you being the warrior in the room is just about supporting them in achieving what needs to happen.
Yes.
And we see this in the business context a lot. But I mean, even you think about an emergency situation, right? You could be the best hand-to-hand combat guy in the world, but if you're digging your way out of a collapsed mine shaft, that's probably not going to help. Your physical fitness may help, but can you keep morale up? Can you lead people? Can you coordinate tasks? Can you do difficult things? I mean, if you've got someone in there who has experience in mine rescue, they're probably going to be the guy. And it's okay to say, I'm not the guy in this situation. But again, if we think about a warrior ethos, like if you're working in any kind of modern military operation, that you're going to have specialists that are going to step up for specialist operations and specialist tasks, and no one's going to go, well, excuse me, but I have the sexiest profession here, so I'm going to dig the tunnel. Like, no, like you have people that specialize in building tunnels. Right? Use those people. So I think there's yeah, a large part of being a warrior too is understanding that it's not about you. So we're circling back to where we were. It's not about you. It's about the end. It's about the mission. It's about achieving a goal. How are we going to do that as best we possibly can? And yeah, it's great to be a jack of all trades, but if there's a specialist and it's a specialist skill, then go with them.
Amen to that. Let me ask you this, Joe. What have you personally learned from interviewing dozens and dozens of the world's leading authorities on violence? What are some of the things that you were like, you had an aha moment, like, wow, okay, I hadn't thought about that before?
That's a big question. There's probably been quite a few. To be honest, everybody says something that's a little bit interesting, and probably the thing that's I guess most interesting out of that is that there's a lot of overlap. Right? There's a lot of similarities. You can have people from completely different life experiences, whether their exposure to violence has been through military or law enforcement service versus pub bouncers versus bodyguards versus just people that have lived through some stuff, like they've lived in third world countries, or they've been victims of crime, or and usually people come to the same sort of conclusions. But also one of the things that I think is probably undersold a lot, and certainly as a young man, I wrote this off. Younger man, but in my 20s, I was like, whenever you come across someone like let's say a Jeff Thompson, right? For those that don't know Jeff Thompson, he was a famous UK doorman, martial artist, martial arts legend in the UK. He wrote some amazing books, But Jeff went from being this hardcore blood and guts martial artist to like just the most gentle human being you'll ever meet, to the point where like people lost faith in him in the combatives world because they're like, Jeff's lost it. Like he's talking about angels and energies and chakras, and he's talking about all this stuff that's like he's lost his mind, right? He's taken too many drugs. But it's something that, and I didn't get it either. But as I get closer to that point, I start to see this pattern where people that have lived real violence suddenly start to see the futility of it all, and that there's more to life than just being good at hurting other people, and that's a skill set for a very, very, very tiny minuscule part of your life, hopefully, right? If it's a part of your life for a long time and it's not professional, then maybe you need to get help. Right? If you need those skills professionally, that's one thing, but if you need skills because a lot of people want to kill you, then you probably need to consider how you're living your life. But I think that one of the things that's really fascinating is this continual pattern of people that have lived a life of violence that have come out the other side, and now they're completely the opposite. They're gentle, they're loving, they want to prevent as much violence as possible. They really are that wise old man on the hill saying, "The art of fighting without fighting, my friend." And I think we can ignore that lesson when we're not ready to hear it, but then similarly, I think sometimes we want that to be the answer. We think we're going to wish away our problems. We don't want to do the hard work to get to that point either. So yeah, those people can sit on that mountain because they've climbed through bodies to get there. But yeah, there's lessons from both sides. So I think probably the short answer to that is, one, there's a lot of similarities, and two, most people that have been there, done that, tend to not want to do it again.
Amen to that. Thank you to the 17 folks that are watching us live. Please like and share if you're just joining us because someone shared this with you. My name is Rich Brown, co-host and co-founder of the American Warrior Society, retired Marine Corps officer, former police officer, corrections officer, special operations officer, and I'm joined by Joe Saunders all the way from Australia, who is the host of the Managing Violence podcast. Please hit that share button now because we got more to come, folks. Let me ask you this, man. What does judo mean to you?
Judo has mean different things to me at different stages in my life. So I guess those that don't know my story, I came across judo, stumbled into judo when I was about 17 years old. I had done a lot of other martial arts growing up, mostly striking arts, which I wasn't very good at. I'll be completely honest. I didn't realize at the time I was actually short-sighted and had depth perception issues. So I was really good at getting hit in the head. Like I was not good at defense in the slightest. And I'm a big target. So yeah, and I wasn't a fast, athletically gifted kid in any way. So striking arts weren't fantastic for me. But when I discovered grappling initially, that was through wrestling. And in Australia, wrestling is a very tiny sport. I mean, it was complete accident. I stumbled across it, but I got a chance to practice freestyle Greco-Roman wrestling under a Russian coach, and I realized that once I could get a hold of people, that I had some skills and I could manipulate human bodies, and as it turns out, like that led me to judo because there wasn't any wrestling competition in Australia. There was like 1 or 2 tournaments a year that you could go to, and I really wanted to compete. I wanted to test myself, and judo provided that opportunity. There was a lot of judo competitions, and I could go and do that against people my age. So I ended up in judo through accident. So initially, I love the fact that it was a sport and that it had something that was unique to me, and that the ability to compete. I also love the versatility of judo, like with wrestling. At a certain point, like wrestling becomes about a handful of high percentage techniques, and after that, it's who's a better athlete and who's tougher. And because without the gi, without the handles, like there's really 5 to 10 really high percentage techniques you're going to use. With the gi, with judo, and especially the time that I was doing it, the rules weren't quite as restrictive as they are now. So there was a lot more things that were possible. There was a lot more leverage points when you start playing with lapels and sleeves and belts, and when you can still grab legs and things like that from judo. It just opened up the floor for creativity, and you could actually have your own style of judo, which was exciting to me. Like I was really big on the Russian style of judo, which was very pick up focused. I like picking people up and doing big slams. I was a pro wrestling fan as a kid, right? I like slamming people. I like doing choke slams and body slams on people and the judo mat. It was always spectacular. I like the big ooh from the crowd. Like that was my thing. Um, so initially it was a sport, and then I got injured, and I started reading, and I started learning more about the philosophy of judo, and that became really intriguing to me because then it became this. It was helping me through a depression as I was reading the writings of Kano and Mifune and famous judo. I guess those warriors that are coming out the other side, as we were just talking about, and it became this whole ethos that I could apply. And then I came back and I started looking at, okay, what are the self defense applications? And then it became a self defense system for me. And no one martial art I think is an entire self defense system, but I started looking at what the applications are and what's the battlefield origin of these techniques. What are the banned techniques, like how do they work, and why are they banned, and so it became a combative system. But to me, judo is really just it's a great martial art that allows you to train at a high intensity relatively safely. And nearly everyone in judo is a good human being. I haven't met too many people that I wouldn't want to hang out with in judo. There's a handful, but there is everywhere. But typically, the nature of grappling tends to get rid of the people that are driven by ego, because it's not something that you're going to be good at straight away, and eventually you're going to get humiliated by someone who's much smaller and older than you. So, I think it's I don't know. It's a long-winded answer to say it's been a lot of things to me at different times. To me now, it's my base. It's something I love doing. It's something I always love watching beautiful judo, whether it's competition style judo or looking at historical footage, or seeing a cool application of something. It's something I'm still interested in.
Yeah, I love judo as well. Thank you to the 20 folks that are joining us live. And if you're just joining us, let me know where you're joining us from. And if you're a member of the American Warrior Society, what your coin number is. I'd love to know that. I want to unpack some of the things you said. I think for those that don't have a background in judo, like you and a lot of people from my generation in the 80s, we were bred on the striking arts. And then when I finally found judo in my mid 20s, it was just like, wow, because I've broke my hand before. And think about this, if you're just watching, a lot of little delicate bones in here. Striking someone with this is a great way to tear your hand up. Whereas if I hit them with the ground, gravity works everywhere, right, Joe? You take gravity with you everywhere you go, and leverage and physics and all those things. And if I know how to manipulate the human body and put them on the ground into an advantageous position for me without breaking my hand, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, and look, it served me so well when I did start bouncing, because like I wasn't a kid who grew up in a lot of fights. Like I didn't have a real barometer for violence. Like I was blessed to grow up with relatively safe home, relatively safe neighborhoods. Like you had the scuffles, I had bullies, I had that kind of stuff, but nothing serious. And when I got into the world of, I guess, real violence in clubs where people were actually trying to do me harm, my panic response, that oh shit response, that happens when you see something for the first time. My response was to grab, throw, and control, as opposed to punch and kick and knee. So that meant that all my incidents looked a lot better on CCTV. They looked a lot better when the police came to investigate. They looked a lot better to bystanders that were watching something unfold, because it looked like I knew what I was doing, as opposed to just brawling. Whereas the guys that I worked with that were more sort of boxing or Muay Thai focused, for example, under pressure they would just start swinging, right? And everybody knows what that looks like, and everyone wants to get involved then, and then you end up with a much bigger fight. So it was fortunate and completely not by design, just by based upon what I was good at the time. That said, I still had to adapt as I started to think about it. I had to adapt my throws. I had to adapt the techniques I was using to make sure I wasn't harming someone, because you really can mess someone up really badly with gravity. And look, there's a significant difference to training to throw a resisting trained athlete versus a drunk 21-year-old. Right? They fly a lot easier. They're a lot lighter, and they don't know how to fall, and they'll stick their arms out, and they'll land on their heads, and they'll do stuff that, like, when you're used to fighting trained people, they protect themselves, whereas you got to protect the other person in this situation. And I've often said, we can get into this if you want to, but when I've been doing control and restraint or arrest tactics training, I always say this is the most difficult physical subset of combat there is, because there's no other subset where you have to protect yourself and protect the other person while they don't have any obligation to protect you and no desire to protect you. And then you can throw in the third angle where you've got to protect yourself, you've got to protect the other person, and you've got to protect the image of the place you're working for and make sure that what you're doing looks good on camera to an untrained witness. So you can make everything perfectly safe, but if it looks bad, it's still going to end up being an issue for you. So I think that control and restraint, grappling control stuff, that is by far the most dangerous and difficult thing to be good at when it comes to real world violence.
No, I could not have said it better myself. I used to teach in the corrections environment, the subject restraint instructor trainer course, and that's exactly right. You know, I have to keep myself safe, the inmate safe, and protect the institution, because everything you do in a correctional setting is obviously on camera and will be, looked at. And I tell you, man, you can get in a lot of trouble. And I want to unpack something that you said too, Joe. You said they don't know how to fall. And that circles back to something that you mentioned when I asked you, what did judo mean to you? And you mentioned the techniques that Kano and others removed from judo. And unpack a little bit of that, because I don't think people know that there were techniques that were taken away, because as you're doing that technique, the uke can't break fall correctly, and they're going to get really hurt. Whereas, so on the street in the self-defense setting, I don't care necessarily about this person's ability to break fall, because they probably don't know how to break fall anyway. And so can you unpack some of that?
Yeah, so I mean, for those, I mean, I'll try to avoid giving a full history lesson because it'll dominate the rest of the conversation. But basically, there was a lot of jiu-jitsu techniques that were taken out when judo was first formulated, because they couldn't be practiced at 100% intensity. And Kano's was so far ahead of his time in that he recognized that the way to make better fighters was not more dangerous techniques, but taking techniques that they can practice at 100% intensity against resistance and getting really good at those techniques. And that was proven time and time again with challenge matches with judo versus jiu-jitsu, where you had people still doing battlefield techniques, but they'd only be able to practice them statically, or they'd only be able to practice them in very limited application, because to do them at full speed was going to end up maiming and crippling your training partners. So therefore, you didn't have many reps at being able to do it for real, if any. Whereas every technique that was in the original Kodokan judo could be practiced at full speed, full intensity on a regular basis, and you got a lot of reps against resisting opponents, which anyone who's ever been in a fight with a wrestler or a rugby player knows it doesn't matter how many techniques they know, they're really goddamn tough to fight, because they're used to resistance, they're used to struggle, they're used to discomfort, and those are all the things that made judo so effective in the early days. That said, it was still a refinement over time, and initially the techniques that were removed, things like leg locks, neck cranks, some throws, they were initially removed because of safety concerns. Because one, we can do them safely, but there's less margin for error, right? If you've got a beginner doing heel hooks or doing a neck crank or something, like, it's, people don't know when to tap. There's a lot more possibility for injury. So a lot of those things were removed just from not removed from the syllabus, but removed from regular training because of those safety concerns. And then you got certain throws like Kani Basami, the scissors throw, as an example, which people may, any old school Pride fans might remember from the Rio Chonan Anderson Silva fight, where he dives in with the leg scissors and ends up in a heel hook. But that throw is still used, but it resulted in people breaking their legs and ending up with massive knee injuries. And it was just a risk reward thing. Like, it was risk management. It's what I do now. It was purely risk management. Do we need to keep the technique in, or do we make it illegal and save people's knees? At the end of the day, we want to save people's injury. This is supposed to be a recreational hobby. We're not training for battlefields at the moment. So that was basically a judgment call there. There's been rule changes in recent times, like the last 20 years or so, where there's been a lot of rule changes in judo, which has mostly been from a spectator point of view. It's about making judo a more unique sport, a more entertaining sport, and differentiating it from wrestling. So there's other political and TV related rule changes that have been made, but initially it was mostly about safety.
Yeah, and I absolutely, for the record, I absolutely love judo and enjoyed that immensely. And it's again, it's not that the techniques did not work. It's just that we can't practice them safely. They have their place, but not perhaps training in a dojo. I mean, and I think you need to reach a level of maturity before those things are handed to you, because you can really hurt your partner, and we would never ever want to do that. Bruce is joining us this morning. He says, "Good morning, gentlemen. AWS coin number 481 from Michigan." Guile from the Philippines asked, "Joe, how was firearms training for you, sir? Isn't it hard for an individual civilian to own a firearm in Australia?"
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole show on Australian firearms law, but we'll try to avoid that. It's the last thing I want to do is be the Australian talking to a bunch of Americans about firearms laws. But look, it is restrictive. There are plenty of Australians that do own firearms, but you need to have a lawful purpose for it, which includes basically if you're a sporting shooter, if you're a farm, if you work in livestock management on a farm, for example, you can own a firearm for those purposes. If you need it occupationally, there's some protocols. So it is possible to own a firearm, but it's expensive. It's expensive to get licensed, to stay licensed. You're subject to a lot of inspections, a lot of audits of your record keeping, of your storage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my experience with firearms growing up, my parents owned a farm, so I grew up shooting rifles and just doing basic farm stuff. Shooting cans, shooting at feral dogs, all that kind of stuff, like that goes in with cattle farming. But so I did that growing up, and then as I professionally got into more security and protection roles, I did go into roles where I could get licensed to carry a firearm while I was on duty, and I was able to explore training in that area. And initially, it was security guards in Australia could only carry revolvers. I'm not sure why they thought that revolvers made us less dangerous than carrying semi-automatics, but that was the thing. And then I moved on to semi-automatic pistols, shotguns, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so it's certainly much more restricted than other parts of the world.
Well, and that brings up the next question. There's a misunderstanding, like, well, you can only carry a revolver. Okay, what? What's the difference?
Yeah, it's just it's gonna make me slower after the first 6 rounds. I mean, and if you're really good at speed loading, then you're probably not even really that much of a difference. But
And the second part I want to ask you about as a follow-up question to Giles' excellent question is, tell us a little bit about the legal use of force in Australia. Like a lot of the members that are on this morning are relatively familiar with the 5 elements for the lawful use of force here in the States. Via Attorney Andrew Bronca, and some of the work that he's done, and we've had him on the show before. But what is that self-defense law like in Australia, Joe?
So it's probably fairly similar. I mean, the wording changes from state to state, but the general feel is the same, which is you are entitled to defend yourself provided the force is reasonable, proportionate to the threat. Okay, and that's basically what it always comes down to: is would a reasonable person, which is 12 people that weren't smart enough to get out of jury duty, would a reasonable person have done the same thing under the same circumstances, given totality of circumstances? Okay, so that includes like your physical size, your knowledge, your experience, your gender, the conditions, the light, the environment, what you could have reasonably expected given the information available to you at the time, all those kinds of things, right? That go into use of force decision making. In theory, that should all be considered and weighed upon objectively by an independent third party to go, what would I have done in that situation? And secondly, was the force that I used proportionate to the threat? Okay, so yes, I can use lethal force in self-defense, but I need to be able to justify very clearly that I had reason to believe that my life was in danger, or I was going to sustain life-changing injury, or I was going to be raped. Those are basically the 3 reasons that you can use lethal force in our common law system. So, with that in mind, it's mostly okay, but people do get unstuck. We had a case where just recently where a guy was charged with. I think he ended up being convicted of manslaughter because someone broke into his home, threatened him with a weapon, and then the guy fled the home, but the homeowner chased him and killed him with a samurai sword. So because he was fleeing the home at the time, that then became an issue with the use of force. Like his argument was he was still in the fight or flight. He was still he wasn't processing that this wasn't a threat anymore. But the fact the guy was actively trying to run away when he got cut down with a samurai sword didn't look great. So yeah, it's not a perfect system, but I guess probably the nuts and bolts of it is you can defend yourself. You can proactively defend yourself. You don't have to wait to be assaulted, but it all depends upon whether your belief that you're in danger was reasonable at the time.
Okay, so because I had heard, and of course, you hear things here in the States, but that in Australia, so let's say that I fill out all the paperwork, I jump through all the hurdles, I get my safe, the authorities come and inspect it, they let me bring my firearm home from the club, and now I've got the firearm in the house in the safe. I heard that even if your attackers, you're in a home invasion and they are armed, you still could not draw that weapon and defend yourself. Maybe I've misheard that. Is that correct?
Practically, that's fairly accurate. Not in terms of what the law says, but just the practicalities of what the law says about how that firearm has to be stored. So, I mean, the reality is that you would have to have your firearm stored in one safe with your ammunition stored separately in a separate compartment. And there would be questions raised if you had time to go to two separate safes to access your ammunition and your firearm, and then take action on the bad guy. Like, what other options did you have prior to that to get away or to change the situation? So I'm not saying it's not possible, but practically it's different to having a loaded firearm in a bedside drawer.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Good answer. Joe, what advice would you give a young Joe Saunders now that you're in your 30s, you're more mellow, you're matured? What would you give? What advice would you give if you could talk to a young Joe Saunders?
I could write a book on this. You know what? This advice I give to young people all the time, right? It's so weird saying young people. Like I just said, I'm in my 30s. There are going to be people like us that are already groaning at me saying young people. But like when I'm talking to like our interns or students that are coming through, where I work, like when you are young and you don't have other people that depend upon you, take advantage of that to be as selfish as you want to be, right? That's the time to work 80-hour weeks. That's the time to go do your overseas martial arts excursion that you want to do, because everything gets harder once people depend upon you. And you don't want to, like, once you hit that window where you're starting to, where you've got kids and a wife or a husband or whatever, then you've got to there's a lot more things that have to line up for you to be able to justify taking that trip or to justify being away for a long period of time. And it depends on your relationship. I'm not saying that's the same for everybody, but for me, I wish I'd trained a little bit more. I wish I'd done a few more things. I wish I'd worked a little bit harder in those years when I had the opportunity to do, because I don't think I realized what a luxury that time is. So that would be probably the first piece of advice. The second thing is, shut up. You don't know as much as you think you do. And if you ask me in 10 years' time what I tell myself now, it'll probably be the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. I was a pretty cocky, arrogant 20-something-year-old that thought I could do anything. I remember to get on the special operations team, we had to go to see a shrink. And somebody's like, hey, you can get that paperwork from the shrink, what they wrote about you, to the department. I'm like, really? So I went and got it. And I remember, the psychologist like, okay, yeah, he's going to be an ideal candidate because this guy thinks he can do anything, and he probably can do a lot of things. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, man, I think that's good. And now that, like I said, I'm in my early 50s and probably old enough to be your dad, Joe. Although I've never been in Australia. Let me think about that now. But, it's one of those things where I've often thought, like, what advice, if anything, because I got married at 18, man. I went from my parents' house to a week later, I'm married, living in my own place. And I never really had that moment in life where, like, nobody's dependent on Rich Brown. I'm as free as the wind. I've always had an obligation. And of course, I joined the Marine Corps a few months later, and here you go.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but I like I like your response to that, because that is so good. I tell the same kind of thing to, like, my oldest son who's in his early 20s. I'm like, you're never going to get this opportunity again.
Yeah.
You're going to be saddled with a full-time job and working 80 hours a week and a wife and kids. And right now, dude, if you got something to do, you need to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, it's not to say you can't go back and do it. It's just there's there's a lot more financial things that need to line up. There's a lot more things, a lot more priorities you got to manage. There's, like if I want to go do a 6-month training excursion around the world, I could probably work towards it, but it's going to be a process. It's not just a matter of me quitting my part-time job and going and living on rice for the next 6 months. Like there's like someone's got to feed my kids. Like this is not going to be as easy as you think it's going to be. So yeah, I take advantage of those opportunities when they present. But I think the second part is important as well. Like no matter how smart you think you are, if people don't agree with you, they're probably right. I remember when I first started teaching in the corporate healthcare sort of sector, I remember being 24, 25 and being so frustrated that people wouldn't take me seriously. Like, why can't I get promoted? Like, I'm good at this stuff. I know this stuff. And I look back and go, I wouldn't have promoted me either. Like I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't realize how immature I was in terms of understanding the organization around me. And I was very idealistic, and that idealism would have got me in trouble. So in a way, people were not promoting me for my own good because I needed to learn those lessons through experience. And so I think whether we're talking about martial arts, we're talking about life in general. Like if it feels like there's something holding you back, then stop and think about what the lesson is you're supposed to be learning.
Yeah, because oftentimes it's you're holding your back.
Well, hey, you know what? I say to people all the time, like they're like, "Oh man, every time I go back to the gym, I get injured." It's like, have you considered what you're doing at the gym? I mean, it feels like there's a lesson to learn here.
Yes, that's exactly right. I was talking to a good friend. He may be watching this morning, and he's like, I think he's my age, and he's like, yeah, I'm on my 4th wife. And I'm like, is it them, bro, or is it you? You know,
there's a selection issue going on, or you're just a terrible husband. One of the two.
I don't know.
It's your fault.
Let me ask you this, Joe. Outside of martial arts, podcasting, what are some of your hobbies? What does Joe do when he's not becoming a better person? What do you do, man?
It's kind of interesting. To be honest, for the longest time, I didn't really have any hobbies outside of that. Like that really was my thing. I've always enjoyed writing, so I tend to write a lot. Actually, product placement just because the opportunity presents. That's my book, Neon Jungle: The Bouncer's True Tales of Lessons, Laughs, and Lacerations. It's available on Amazon, or you can get a signed copy on my website at violencepod.com. But I wrote that book, which was just initially a collection of war stories, or bouncer stories, which were amusing. And at the time, when I started writing that, I never thought to write down my stories. I told them so many times when I was training people that I just had them like off the cuff. And I started sharing some of them with my friends that knew me now, that didn't know me from that world. And they thought they were just like the most absurd, amazing things ever. And I was like, really? That people don't have these experiences? This is novel? Okay, that's interesting. So I started digging back through my notepads, and I'd been an obsessive note taker. Like I had details about who said what color shirt they were wearing, what direction they left in when they left the venue. Like I wrote down this stuff. I was always ready to go to court at any second. And so that became really useful to write a book. So, but I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed teaching. I've always enjoyed speaking when I get the opportunity to. I used to write songs. I used to be in a band. So I had a few little bits and pieces. The thing that I've started doing in recent times, because I was never any good at it. I never grew up like doing things with my hands. Like I never built stuff or fixed stuff. My dad was amazingly skilled at that, but it just wasn't something that interested me. And when we went into our COVID lockdown last year, I started woodworking for the first time, and I really developed an enjoyment for doing that and learning some skills and building some furniture and doing some stuff with my hands. It's been really, really cool. But nothing I'm skilled at, nothing I'm happy to show off. but some stuff hasn't broken yet, and it's been a year, so I'm happy with it.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah, very similar, man. I got a woodworking shop here and got into that once I retired, and really enjoy that process. I just find it very tranquil.
And you never run out of stuff that you can buy.
Yeah.
Like there's always a new tool. There's always a new something. It's like, it becomes like it's like growing up stamp collecting in a way. It's like, oh, I don't have that particular shape chisel. So you'll find all this kind of stuff just to give you an excuse to spend money. But
Well, do you think that hobbies outside of because most of the people on here are shooters or fighters or what have you, Do you think that having those hobbies outside of that is important, Joe?
I think it's important to give yourself balance, and depends on what that balance is for you. Like if you are dealing with high conflict situations, like I mean, someone like yourself who had a career in military, law enforcement, corrections, etc. Like if your downtime is also shooting and fighting, like it's it's probably not going to lead to healthy relationships. I mean, some people can manage it, I'm sure, but generally speaking, I think you need something. You need that yin to your yang, and I think it's important that whatever your norm is, that you have something that counteracts that. Like right now, like my day to day is dealing with corporate clients, government clients, usually managing expectations, doing doing risk management, doing client management, doing education. So like it is fun to get on the mat and fight for my life occasionally because that's a balance for me in the opposite direction. So I think it's important that you whatever you do in your downtime should be something that improves your quality of life, not something you do out of obligation or because you're fearful of not doing it. And this has always been, to come back a little bit full circle, I guess, about being a good instructor. I always, even when I was doing like high intensity combatives training, where we're doing a lot of scenario replication and we're doing a lot of worst case scenario work, and we're fighting with good intensity and contact, and there's injuries and stuff. I always want to make sure that people were showing up because they got some value out of it and added to their quality of life, not because they were terrified of the world around them and this was their only way of feeling like they're in control of it. Right? If training became a negative part of their life, then I didn't want to train them like that. Training should be something that adds to your quality of life. So I think whatever you're doing, provided it adds value to you and it makes you a better human being and it makes you happier and makes you able to function better and look after people that you care about, more power to you. Yeah. If all you want to do is shoot and fight all day and you're a great human being, then good for you, man.
No, I totally agree. And I'm going to check out your book, man. I have often thought about writing a similar book because, it's a part of my life that a lot of people that know me now have no idea about, but it was such a formative job to work in a variety of nightclubs, from weird S&M dungeon type settings to topless bars to, I've worked in, really honky tonk kind of weird places to just amazing nightclubs that were, thousands of people in there.
It's amazing how quickly you can get sick of seeing naked women, isn't it? Like, I mean, when you're 21, it's like, this is the best job in the world. And 2 weeks later, you're like, oh God, if I have to see another set of boobs.
Yeah. Well, and my wife is probably watching this morning and she, I would come in at 2 a.m. Sometimes she'd be awake, what are those nasty girls? Okay. But yeah, it's interesting. And for those, like I have a real good friend who's like 6'5", and he was a bodyguard for an A-list celebrity for years. He was a Marine and multiple combat tours. And we were hanging out at my pub and he said, I've never been in a fight in my entire life. And it almost staggered me. I'm like, are you serious? Because like you said, I think the lens with which I see the world is I've been in hundreds, if not thousands of fights, from growing up as a white kid in a predominantly African-American neighborhood to being a bouncer to being a cop. And these were experiences were novel to him, to use your word. And I think, man, it's interesting to look back on it, especially and I can't wait to read your book, Joe. I did not know that was out there. Shame on me, but I'll be picking it up.
To be honest, I've only it's really only kind of taken off this year. So you're forgiven.
Okay, good. I'll get it today. And once again, please tell the audience where they can get it.
Yeah, so it probably the easiest place, if you're anywhere other than Australia, the easiest place to get it is just on Amazon. It's Neon Jungle. Let me just get that on camera. Neon Jungle. Feel free to check it out. If you would like a signed copy, though, I am doing signed copies, but obviously I have to ship them from Australia, so the shipping will be a little more. But yeah, by all means, check that out if you want to do that as well. But yeah, man, it was fun. And look, I'm always working on multiple projects. So like at the moment, I've got 2 other books really 3 books in development, which shift in priority depending on what's going on. I'm working on a book on workplace violence prevention in the Australian context, which is no one's written a book about that. So I'm doing that one. Most of what I consult on now is workplace violence prevention. So that's something that it has commercial implications for me. I'm working on a book for securing houses of worship. and I'm working on another book for verbal de-escalation skills. So there's 3 books. 2 of them are very serious, like the workplace violence and the securing houses of worship. They're much more classical nonfiction reference texts, which just aren't as much fun to write. It's not as much fun as telling bouncer stories. So it is fun to break it up and sort of just shoot the shit and talk about stuff that's not really that serious. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy the process.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Let me ask you this. Now we've kind of been down at the micro level. I'm going to take Joe Saunders. We're going to take you up to the stratosphere, man. When you look at the English speaking countries around the world, what is the greatest threat in your summation that they face nowadays? What is the greatest threat, Joe?
Divided communities.
Unpack that, please.
Yeah. I think the biggest threat we have is, whether it's organic or whether it's been manufactured, and I'm open to both possibilities, we are more divided than perhaps we've ever been. And we've got more criteria to separate ourselves from others. We've got more criteria to say, I'm not like you because you do this, whether it's who you vote for, who you sleep with, what clothing you wear, what brand you like, how you spend your leisure time, what you do for work, like what car you drive. Like there's all these different criteria with which we can now segregate each other into different groups. And one thing that we know through psychology and evolutionary psychology of conflict, is that the easiest way to do harm to someone is if you other them, and if you see them as something different from yourselves. And we've done that, we've created that, and the media feeds that narrative because it sells, because people want to have an enemy. We in times of prosperity, we manufacture problems where there are none, because I think human beings have an instinctive urge to overcome something, to be fighting something, to struggle for something. And when everything's given to us, because we live in affluent societies, where we have a level of wealth now that is just obscene compared to any other time in human history, we manufacture trouble where there isn't any, right? And yeah, prior to COVID, when that's been a real wake up call for a lot of places. But prior to that, I mean, we were arguing over the most mundane crap, and getting into fights and killing people over just mundane, banal, trivial rubbish, because we had no enemy to fight. And it's crazy that I think that if I was a foreign power looking to take down a government, the first thing I'd do is turn its population against itself. Right? And I see so much evidence of that here in Australia. I see it. I mean, obviously, what we see in the US is a media representation and whatever. I come through my social media feed, so I take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, we see enough evidence of it to be concerned. I mean, the second that neighbors stop supporting each other, and people aren't rallying to the support of people that are like them, or that live near them, that's when we're at our weakest. And whether that's going to manifest in just societal disruption, whether it's going to make us vulnerable to an enemy attack, strong communities make for strong countries. And it worries me when we allow ourselves to see the enemy in our neighbor.
I think that's a phenomenal point you make, Joe. And going back to evolutionary psychology, I'm reading a really good book right now called The Goodness Paradox by Dr. Richard Ringman, who did a lot of primate studies. And I just started it, but it's a fascinating, and he looks at what the Dani tribes in Papua New Guinea, or the Yanomama, and these hunter gatherers, and they're really gentle within their own communities, but let there be an other, an enemy, and they are absolutely ruthless. And I think that's a human trait that we need to recognize, and only by recognizing it, I think, can we defeat it. Like there was a case recently, Joe, here in America, like this week, where a beautiful young Puerto Rican couple were flying a Puerto Rican flag outside their car, driving down a street in Chicago, and they were stopped, pulled out of their car by a group of African Americans, and literally executed, shot in the head and killed.
Wow.
Just because they were perceived to be another. In reality, they were just a young married couple on Puerto Rican Pride Day, that chose the wrong neighborhood to fly their Puerto Rican flag down, and they were assassinated in broad daylight.
Mm.
But that othering that we do, that tribalness, the divisiveness of jumping into two camps, I think, man, I think you're right. I think that's going to be the destruction of the Western powers.
Yeah, and look, I mean, people united when they have to be, right? When we rely upon each other to survive, if we when we rely upon our neighbor to be able to go to work, to be able to, like it's such a romantic idea, right? But when everyone in the cul-de-sac has a job that supports the livelihood of someone else, we all have to look after each other, and like when I first moved out of home, I moved in with two other fighters, and we used to have like MMA fight nights every Tuesday night, and it was like we would put on the gear and would spar with each other, and we would we would go to town, and then we'd we would invite friends. Like everyone was, all our friends were martial artists or fighters, so we'd do this. But I quickly realized, because it was my house, and I owned the house, so I had to make the mortgage repayments, and the other two guys were renting from me, my best mates. But what I realized is that when we injured each other, I had to pay double rent because the other guy couldn't go to work. So you quickly realize that, you know what, as much fun as this is fighting with each other, it actually hurts me when you're injured. And I think if we apply that at a global level, we might be a little bit nicer to each other. Because at the end of the day, like when bad shit happens, we rely upon the person next to us. And just because bad things aren't happening now doesn't mean we shouldn't be building those bonds and those relationships now.
Yeah, I remember something that one of the Apollo astronauts said when he saw the Earth for the first time, from space, and he's like, "Oh my God, everybody that's ever lived and everybody that ever will live is on this tiny little blue ball hurtling through outer space."
Yeah.
And it just changed that little paradigm, that contextual paradigm. It just shifted for him, and he's like, "Wow, we really are all one." And it's weird that it takes a moment like that, the profoundness of that moment, to kind of wake himself up and go, "My God, what is all this division for?" Because we truly are on this little rock spinning through space together.
Yeah, and look, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I think our society in general, whether especially in first world countries, we've outgrown what we've evolved for, right? Things are so much bigger, so much more complex. There's so many more people. There's so many more sources of information. I don't know that we have the hardware to keep up with the software, and I don't know what the answer is to that. Maybe there will be. To quote, I think was it Einstein that said, I don't know what war that World War III will be fought with, but I know World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Like
Yeah.
it's like maybe we need that great reckoning. I don't know, but it's I look, I try to teach my kids. My kids are young, but I try to teach them, like, if someone doesn't believe the same thing as you, that's fine. I mean, we live in a really multicultural area in Melbourne, and they learn all about different beliefs and different faith systems and different cultures and different norms, and they have an exposure that I never had growing up, and I'm grateful for that. But they just understand that people are different, but they can be different and good people, no matter who they vote for, what they believe in, or anything else. And it's not our place to judge; it's our place to look after each other.
Yeah. Terry Thompson says that it's sad that the media first reported it as a Confederate flag, and that's why they were dragged out of their cars. Yeah. And that statement reminds me, Joe, of when we lived in South Carolina. In our home, I had an American flag for a while, then I changed it out for a Tennessee flag. And one night we ordered pizza, and this African American gentleman pulled up to our home to deliver the pizza, and I come out on the front porch. I'm like, "Hey, buddy, good to see you." And I said, "What do I owe you?" And he smiling, and then he looked at the flag and he goes, "What kind of flag is that?" I guess he thought it was a Confederate flag or something. I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's a Tennessee state flag." It's like, "Oh, okay." Whew. But we have to remember that these things that we've put out there are symbols, and what they mean to other people may not mean the same thing to us. And I think we need to respect that, the optics of it. And it goes back to what you were saying, like you said, Joe, to come full circle. the optics of using certain techniques, the optics of flying certain flags, the optics of wearing certain kind of clothing or making certain types of speeches. And it goes back to also to what the dog saw. It doesn't matter what you see or what you think. It's what is that other person, right?
Yeah, and look, I think this is the necessary the counterpoint to ultimate freedom does not. You can be free to do what you want. You're not free of the consequences, though, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, it's at a certain point, freedom becomes entitlement. Where do we draw that line, right? Between I have a right to do what I want. Okay, cool. But I have a right to interpret that the way that I want. So at what point do we just stop killing each other? It's again, I don't have the answers. I can ask some difficult questions, but I'm not smart enough to have all the answers.
Yeah.
I got some hypotheses that I'll probably look back on in 10 years from now. I'll watch this interview and go, God, shut up. But
Not at all. Ruben is on this morning. Ruben was in our class last week, an amazing firearms instructor out of New Mexico. He says there was a picture on 9/11 of first responders and people all covered in debris and dust. And for that moment, you couldn't tell race, creed, or political affiliation. You could only tell in that moment that they were American. Amen to that.
yeah, and look, you see this all over the world, right? We see multinational rescue missions, like the soccer team in Thailand that were stuck in caves, right? And you had experts coming from all over the world to try and solve this one problem. And that's when humanity is at our best. Like that's when we're so fixated on a goal that it doesn't matter who gets it. It doesn't matter who gets the credit. It doesn't matter who gets the funding. It doesn't matter whose face is on TV. It's about whether we can achieve that goal. And it's incredible what we can achieve when we do that. And I think that's we see it and we champion it for 5 minutes, and then the media cycles over and we go back to hate each other because someone said something dumb on Twitter. Right?
Yeah, and again, I worked. I don't know if you. I don't talk about this much on the show, but I spent when I retired, I went to the American Red Cross and did disaster relief operations, and I completely get it because I wanted to give back. I wanted my next chapter in my life to not be breaking things, but helping people, and there's just some amazing things out there you can get involved in if you're looking for it. Final question, Joe. It's been amazing to have you on the show. I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's late where you're at, but if you had a crystal ball, the Joe Saunders crystal ball, man, where do you see the rest of this year and maybe the next year or so? Where are we heading, man? Is it better or worse? And if so, why? Tell me what you think.
If I had a crystal ball, it'd be for sale at violencepod.com, but under the merch tab. But man, that's such a tricky question because this is such a weird time in human history. Like part of what I do professionally is threat assessment, right? And so threat assessment is to a degree predicting the future. But the best predictor of the future is looking at the past, like how has someone acted under the same circumstances in their history, because that's likely to be how that pattern repeats itself. We're in a we're in a period in human history at the moment where we don't have much of a what does the world look like in a global pandemic, right? That's not something that we've kind of got an instruction manual for. And it's not something that we can sort of say, well, in the Spanish flu, this happened. Like, yeah, but the world was very different 100 years ago. Like, there's a lot of things that are different now. Um, and even like we're seeing here, I mean, the vaccine rollout in Australia has been incredibly slow. So we're actually, despite the fact that our levels of infection have been much better than most of the rest of the world, like our levels of vaccination are terrible. So because of that, I mean, we're now looking at economic issues in terms of whether we'll be allowed to travel outside of the country because still have a highly unvaccinated population. So like business changes. I mean, I've got a seminar tour in England that I'm hoping to do in March, but that's looking less and less likely now. So I mean, in terms of whether things get better or worse, I think compared to last year, things will get better. I think we're entering this whole new era. Like something I'm very passionate about trying to educate people. It's not about bouncing back to how things were, because things aren't going back to how things were. We've got to figure out how we make the best of how things are and how things will be, because there are things we've learned, there are things we've achieved over the last 18 months that we shouldn't throw out and just go, I want to go back to how things were in 2019. Okay, no, like there's been advancements that have been made. Let's keep those. But yeah, look, I think in terms of a lot of the topics we've been talking about, I unfortunately I do see a lot of those elements getting worse. I think our community is getting more divided. I think we're seeing more people struggling. There's certainly here in Australia, there's been tremendous impact on small businesses and people being able to feed their families. It's something that I think will lead to more crime, more petty disturbance. But I hope that this experience bonds people together. I haven't seen any evidence of it yet, though, which is kind of a pessimistic note to leave things on. But I think if we're talking about our immediate future, it's we've got some challenges on the horizon, and hopefully our elected leaders are up to it.
Yeah, let's hope so. Well, Joe, thank you for coming on the show today, man. Where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, so look, probably the two places to check out my website, violencepod.com. That's got the Managing Violence podcast. It's also got my book. It's got the merchandise. Anything else you want to get in that area? It's got all the episodes up there. I'm on all the social medias. YouTube, just search for Managing Violence with Joe Saunders, and you'll find all the interviews. There's something like 150 to 200 hours of free content that is all available there. That up until 15 years ago, you would have had to pay and a ton of shipping to get VHS tapes and DVDs of. so go enjoy the free stuff there. And if you want to support it, go to patreon.com/managing violence. But other than that, there's a ton of free stuff out there. I'm always happy to assist. So just search for me wherever you want to find me, and I'm probably there.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. And please check out the Managing Violence podcast. It's an amazing show, and we're honored to have you on the show this morning, Joe. I'll let you enjoy your evening, sir, and just want to thank you again for coming back on.
My absolute pleasure, Rich. I'm always happy to do it. It's always a fun conversation.
Absolutely. Stay safe, folks, and remember the fight is coming. Be ready.